Hey everyone, today we are going to reveal everything you need to know about set 14 for Teamfight Tactics Cyber City, all the way from the set mechanic, all 61 new champions, and of course, the new augments that are going to be brought in. The new set comes out on April 2nd, and the public beta environment will be around 2 weeks before the launch. But let's just get right into this. Let's start off with the new set mechanic though, because I know that's what most people are wondering. The mechanic is called a hack, which is essentially a modified augment selection phase, which comes up every now and then. It's not every augment, but it'll look something like this, where we have one themed augment that you could re-roll a bunch of times. For example, this one I have is Black Market, which will essentially only give me econ augments. So I have wise spending here. If I re-roll it, I'll get a bunch of other ones that are similar to that. And then of course I have my regular 2 other augment selections. Other examples are going to be stuff like build around, where you get an augment that you could build your team around with, such as Trifecta, including other stuff like True Twos, things like that. And sometimes, like in this example, you get bonus gold when you take that augment. Another new interesting hack that can happen is being able to take 1 or 2 augments of a lower tier. So it could be like a prismatic augment and some gold versus getting 2 gold augments, or getting a gold augment and some gold versus 2 silver augments. I think these choices widen up the game a lot, and it should be fun to kind of play around with some of the added consistency that you may get from stuff like themed augments. For example, with Black Market, like if I really like playing econ, but I want a better augment than what was offered to me, I don't have to completely grief my game by re-rolling that augment, because there's a chance for me to get an econ augment that I like even more, especially if I just need any econ augment. Because in a lot of my guides, I say, hey, this comp, you generally take an econ augment early, but now you can re-roll it a bunch if you get that selection. This definitely changes how we are going to be picking augments, but we'll get more into how to play around this mechanic as the set releases. Of course, if you want to take a look at this and everything else in a written format, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/set14. Now let's move on to the traits. I like going over traits before the champions because it helps to know what each champion belongs in before actually going over them. That way you know who works with what. But let's start off with Anima Squad. This is a reused trait, but it's a lot different this time than it was before. It coincidentally was one of my favorite traits of the past, so let's see how they changed this. At each tier, pick a weapon that a random Anima Squad champion fires periodically during combat. Anima Squad champions gain armor, magic resistance, and damage amp. So at 3, 5, 7, and 10, you get some armor and MR, you get some damage amp, and you also get to choose a weapon. These things are called stuff like Uwu Blaster, Vortex Glove, lasers, mines, things like that. And the weapons scale with Anima Squad star level and stage. These are going to be Seraphine, Silas, Alawi, Vayne, Yumi, Leona, Xayah, and Aurora. So I love the old Anima Squad personally. Hopefully it's not like real life where there's a great anime and then they do a live action of it and then I never want to touch it ever again. I'm hoping this trait is actually a bunch of fun. Next up, we have our Boombots. Boombots fire a missile every 400 damage dealt at nearby enemies and deals magic damage. 10% of damage taken contributes to damage dealt. And this is a 2/4/6, so it's purely damage, nothing else. Reminds me a lot of Automata, similar to that, but a little bit of a different take on it, where you have to just deal damage instead of having instances of damage. But that's going to be Kog'Maw, Skarner, Fiddlesticks, Cho'Gath, and Urgot. Now, instead of cyberbullying, we have a cyber boss instead. Your strongest cyber boss upgrades to its final form and gains health, ability power, and its ability to hit more enemies. So essentially, you run a bunch of units, you channel it all into one person, and then ideally they carry your team. But this is a 2-3-4 trait. There are only 4 of them. It's going to be Poppy, Veigar, Ziggs, and Kabuko. Kabuko is making a return. And if you do get 4 of them, all 4 of them upgrade, which is pretty cool. We'll go over each and every one of their abilities later to see how cyber boss actually affects them. But essentially, if you have them with the trait active, they just hit more units around whatever they're currently hitting, which is pretty cool. I could see these users being great for stuff like Morello or Red Buff, but maybe you just want to focus on damage so that they actually kill everything. Next up, we have is Cypher. Gain intel by losing combat, increase for loss streaks, gain a small amount for killing enemies, and that means this is going to be the fortune trait or the lose streak trait of the set, but it's going to be a little different than what we're used to because you may only trade your intel for loot one time and on either round 3-3, 3-7, 4-3, or 4-7. So you have to get enough stacks before you reach a certain stage. You can't just lose until you want to cash out. I personally don't like that change, but I have to play with it to know for sure. It's like ordering filet mignon wrapped in bacon. It sounds great on paper sometimes, and if you love steak and you love bacon, what could go wrong? And then you get it and then you're very underwhelmed. Maybe this could be a case of that, maybe not. I'm hoping it's going to be good, But after trading intel, Cypher champions gain attack damage and ability power, and this is going to be a 3-4-5, and you get more intel as you stack up. That's going to be Vi, LeBlanc, Draven, Galio, and Zed. No legendary unit. Normally, this trait does have a 5 cost, but I'm guessing since you can't cash out in the later rounds, they kind of prevented that. But unlike last set, where they removed the emblem you can make for the Fortune trait, I believe there is a Cypher emblem this set. It'll be interesting to see if it stays or goes, because normally you can't really craft them. Next up we have is Divinicorp. Divinicorp champions grant unique stats to your team, increase for each Divinicorp in play, and the Divinicorp champions gain double. Does this remind anyone of anything? This is the Divine trait, but reprinted and renamed to fit the Cyber City theme. And essentially, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trait. They added a lot of splash units in this set. So if you really like the threat trait, like Divine kind of reminds me of that, because you could kind of just play one random one for fun. And that's going to be Morgana, Ras, Gragas, Senna, Vex, and Renekton. So yeah, we see Ras in this set. First time he's going to be showing up. Obviously, it's one of Kane's evolutions, but based on what unit you're fielding, you could get an AP bonus, armor and MR, AD, health, crit, attack speed, and if you have the emblem, Omnivamp. I really like Divine in previous sets. There are some cool reroll comps you can kind of do. Maybe there's like a 3-cost reroll with Gragas and Senna, and then we'll have to see what Divine combinations people can come up with. Another thing that's coming back in this set is going to be Fine Vintage, the augment. Before, there was like a Divine plus Fine Vintage comp. I wonder if that's going to be back. That should be very fun to kind of try out. Exotech's going to be the next trait. Gain unique items that can only be equipped by Exotech champions. They gain health and attack speed for each item equipped. So if you think of like cybernetic units from before, ironically enough, we already skipped the C letter, so cybernetics might not be in this set, at least in the trait form. This is going to be a 3-5-7-10 with Jax, Jhin, Neferi, Mordekaiser, Varus, Sejuani, and Zeri. And one thing I want to get definitely for sure is going to be the all Exotech items at 10 Exotech. You need 3 emblems to make that work, but I think there are like 7 Exotech items, so you go from 3 items all the way to 7. If anything I've said was confusing, this trait is very similar to Ink Shadow from, I believe that was like set 9 or something. I can't remember what trait each set was in, but essentially you get some preset items from those 7 and you unlock each one of them at 3, 5, and 7. And then ideally you can build around them and make your carry a little extra hard. And then for each item you have on that unit, they get an extra bonus of health and attack speed. So it's a mix of cybernetic and Ink Shadow. God of the Net, after 2-player combats, open an armory of trait mods that permanently reprogram a champion to benefit from a trait but not contribute, and every time you get a trait mod, the next one requires 1 additional round. Champions can only have 1 trait mod. And this is going to be for a 5 cost. It's going to be Garen. This is going to make him a very good +1 random unit of the set, because you could just tailor him to fit whatever trait you want. Obviously, since it takes 2-player combats to get one, you probably should only play him if you're like super healthy in the late game, or if you get him early. That way you could get whatever trait you actually want him to get, because you might not get the one you want in the first try, right? You get an armory of traits, but if that doesn't work, you have to wait another 3-player combat rounds. That's going to take a while. But as I've said before, there are a lot of splash units you can kind of use in this set, and Garen is going to be one of them as a legendary. Golden Ox, I don't think we've seen this one, and this one is actually pretty unique. I don't think we've even had any trait like this in TFT before, but Golden Ox units gain damage amp and have a chance to drop gold on kill. And if you spend 8 gold on rerolls or XP in a single turn, permanently increase their damage amp and the gold required for the next bonus. Rerolls count double towards gold spent. So this is a trait that encourages you to spend your gold, and you want to do it every turn. So my guess here is you only want to do this if you have an augment that gives you a ton of gold. If not, you just won't be able to afford everything. But maybe people find creative ways around that. This is going to be a 2-4-6. Maybe you can kill a bunch of units to get extra loot, and because they drop gold on kill, and that's how you kind of finance the whole operation. Point is, it's got to come from somewhere. I have to pay my taxes soon, so maybe it's coming from that, but it's going to be with Alistair, Graves, Jarvan, Annie, Aphelios, and Viego. Luckily, you do get damage amp from the trait, so it will be easier to kind of kill units when you build this up. But I'm guessing you want to play for a win streak while also having a lot of gold. It is tough to do. You might be broke later on in the game if you like mess up a couple of rounds, but ideally you kill everything and gain everything back. Nitro, every round Nitro champions grant Chrome to Robot based on their star level. Each Chrome grants 14 health and 1 ability power, and at 200 Chrome it upgrades to a T-Hex. And then if you get 4 of them, it also fires a giant laser. But that's going to be with Kindred, Nidalee, Shyvana, and Elise. And I'm guessing you want to stack this up as early as possible because every round you make your robot a little bit stronger, but it's not by much, you know? So it's like if you get a late game, you're going to miss out on like a lot of rounds of stacking it up. But if you like all these traits so far, check out the Discord down below. Feel free to gift me some Discord Nitro if you want. I won't be making any animal noises for you to earn it, but hopefully this video is enough for that. Next up we have is Overlord. The Overlord unit takes a bite out of the unit in the hex behind him, dealing 40% of their max health as true damage. He gains 40% of their health and 33% of their attack damage. This is just going to be Renekton. He's just like a greedy person, and essentially if you have someone with a ton of health, put them behind your Renekton, he eats them and he becomes like a super Renekton. I'm guessing you don't always have to do this every round. Like if your Renekton's a 1-star, like who really cares? But if you have a 2-star Renekton, then obviously you want to buff him up as much as possible, and ideally he'd like 1v9 the entire game. But this is a take on the anomaly from last set. Soul Killer, gain a hologram copy of the highest cost enemy Viego helped kill last round. It has a bunch of health and deals a bunch of damage, and also has one recommended item. Viego is a 5 cost, so it's a good like 1 turn delay effect. Like when you play Viego immediately, he's not going to help you yet, but after he kills someone, he can give you a nice boost in the next fight, so do keep that in mind. I do like that they add one recommended item because we haven't really seen that too much in the past for effects like this, so that should be fun to kind of try out. Street Demon, for some reason this like makes me think of something else. Allies in painted hexes gain health, ability power, and attack damage. Some hexes are signature hexes and grant 50% more. Street Demons double all bonuses. So essentially, if you remember KDA from the past, you have like a bunch of assigned hexes and they're all painted, but the one difference is that some of the hexes are even more enhanced. So essentially you get health, AD, and AP, and it's a 3, 5, 7, 10. It's going to be Dr. Mundo, Zyra, Echo, Jinx, Rengar, Brand, Misfortune, Nico, and Samira. Syndicate's going to be the next one. We've had Syndicate in the past, but I think this one's going to be a little bit different. You get a Kingpin hat that uniquely upgrades a Syndicate champion's ability. It'd be pretty funny if they made it a fedora and then it gives them like a sword or something like that. But Syndicate champions gain health and damage amp. It's going to be a 3, 5, 7. You could have 1 Kingpin, 2 Kingpins, and then at 7 you upgrade Kingpin's effect. That's going to be Shaco, Darius, Twisted Fate, Braum, and Misfortune. And in these types of builds, you always want to focus on one unit, so the other ones that are in the trait still are just going to be filler units. Nothing wrong with that. This does remind me of, I think it was like Warrior Crown or something like that, or Fairy Crown. I think it was actually Fairies, but we will have to see who the best holder of that item is. Virus, I'd make a joke about this, but I don't want to lose any social credit score. The virus infects her shop with a 10% chance to spawn a bloblet. When purchased, it merges and increases the strongest Zack's max health by 3% and ability power by 5. I actually tried this one out. This one's kind of interesting. You want the Zack early so that you infect your shops earlier so that you could get more bloblets. It takes a really long time to buff him up though. Like I got a bunch of these when I played Zack, and I don't know. He didn't feel that strong. I didn't get him to 2-star. Like obviously you want the 2-star, right? But I think I got him in like first round of stage 4. And when the bloblets show up in your shop, when you buy them, you still get the champion behind it. So it's not like you're griefing your shops when you play this. But he's pretty much just a generic 5 cost tank unit that you could play in any comp because this is his only trait. So he'd probably work really well in a lot of the traits that give like only offense. For example, Syndicate, this gives both health and damage amp, so it gives both offense and defense. But some of these only give offense. Like let me look at one of the ones from before. Boombots is an example of that. Like you only have damage in this trait, like you get no tankiness. So maybe playing these units and throwing in a random Zack might help out a bit. Might not be the best example, but I'm sure we'll find other examples later on. Rapid Fire would be one of those examples. Like Rapid Fire, you only get attack speed and you have no tanks in the build, so pairing it up with a virus might be a good idea. AMP is going to be the next trait we go over. AMP champions upgrade their abilities in unique ways with AMP. They also gain health. So this is a completely new type of trait that we have not seen before. Essentially, when you have AMP units in play and activate the trait, you gain 1 AMP, 2 AMP, 3 AMP, 4 AMP. Normally we gain stuff like attack damage, attack speed, ability power, things like that, but AMP amplifies your ability. So we'll cover the abilities later, obviously. But let's say Samira hits multiple targets. Getting more amp makes her hit even more targets. So that's going to be pretty cool when you get like a lot of amps amped up. It'd be interesting to see what breakpoints work best with each of the champions. Like obviously you want more, but maybe after a certain point it becomes kind of redundant. So I do wonder how deep you want to go into this trait versus splashing in other traits. Next one up we have is Bastion, generic tank trait. You gain armor and magic resist. Bastions gain more. And for the first 10 seconds of combat, bastions increase their bonus by 100%. What do you do with effects like that? Well, you obviously want a lot of health to pair up with your armor and MR. Shield effects are also pretty good. Like Crown Guard might be really nice because you double up on the early shield that you get from Crown Guard. And then you also have enhanced armor and MR to kind of enhance that temporary shield. So it is definitely something to play around with. The 6th trait is very interesting because we have like Jax, Poppy, Alawi, Shyvana, Galio, Sejuani, and Renekton. So we have 7 bastions, but at 6, non-bastions gain an additional 40 armor and MR. So you get 90 plus 40. It turns everyone into a super tank because that's like 130 armor and MR. Base stats are normally around like 20 or 30. So essentially you could have like a carry unit have 160 armor and MR. Drop a stacking item on them and some lifesteal, they probably will be near unkillable. Fun combo to kind of try out. Next up we have is Bruiser. You just gain health, same with the Bruiser traits in the past. This is a 2-4-6. That's going to be Alistair, Mundo, Darius, Gragas, Mordekaiser, Cho'Gath, and Kabuko. Dynamo, every 3 seconds your team gains mana. Dynamos gain 100% more. This is a 2-3-4 trait with Morgana, Jhin, Elise, and Misfortune. There was a trait like this in the past. I forget what it's called, but it essentially is a reprint and a rename. Executioner abilities can critically strike. They also gain bonus crit strike chance and crit strike damage. If the target's health is below 30%, the bonus critical strike damage is doubled. This is a 2-3-4-5 with Graves, Rengar, Varus, Vex, and Urgot. You gotta assume there's gotta be some Executioner reroll build here with Rengar and Varus paired up with some tank that fits with one of their secondary traits. This is very similar to an old Executioner trait in the past, if not the same exact thing. I don't really mind reprints. Sometimes when they come up with brand new everything, it complicates the game for no reason. It's kind of like looking at Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Some of them have one line of text, the other one you need to take out a dictionary plus all their other 10 complementary cards in order to know what they do. So I don't really mind reprints. And there's only so many things you can do in the world, especially in a game, that sometimes forcing creativity leads to like really useless stuff, in my opinion. Like obviously creativity is good, but I think stuff like AMP, very nice stuff because we haven't tried too many of those. And then we could see if we like it. But imagine if we had like 20 effects that are similar to this. That'd be kind of weird, you know? It's like, it's a little overwhelming. So I kind of like that they have stuff like Bastion, which is simple to understand, Bruiser, same thing, and then some reprints of stuff in the past. Like Executioner used to be like a brand new thing from before. But now that we've seen it before, it makes it a little less overwhelming, you know? But next up we have is Marksman. Marksman gain attack damage. After 8 seconds of combat, they increase their bonus by 100%. That's going to be Kindred, Jhin, Jinx, Aphelios, and Xayah. Just a generic backline damage trait. I don't think they've had this exact thing exist in the past before, but next one up we have is Rapid Fire. Like both of these are just generic backline traits for AD champions. Or I guess this one's AD, this one's attack speed. But the ways they work kind of affect how you build them. For example, Marksman, you want to focus on the later parts of the fight. So you need to make sure that you have a strong tank line so that after 8 seconds when they do get the increased bonus, you're not already dead. That way they can kind of carry the second half of the fight. Rapid fires kind of work in the same way where your team gains 10% attack speed. Rapid fire champions gain more on each attack, stacking up to 10 times. You want to be able to reach those 10 stacks before your whole team dies. So you definitely want to get a good front line with both of these traits, but rapid fire's Kindred, Kog'Maw, Twisted Fate, Draven, and Zeri. So it will be tricky running comps with like 4 marksmen and 6 rapid fire. At least it was in the past whenever we had traits very similar to these. Like even if you get an emblem, it's really hard to like itemize 4 pure damage units, you know, let alone 6. A lot of them just end up being trait bots and you sometimes just have no front line to really make the 6 trait work. I wonder if they actually solved that problem in this set. I'm almost willing to make a bet right now that most people will only use maximum 2 marksmen in like 90% of the comps out there, and maybe up to like 4 rapid fire, maybe just only 2. I'm not saying they have to fix this, but it does feel kind of bad when you get like rapid fire emblem from something random and then you still don't go 6, you just like go 4 but remove one of the normal units you normally play. Because it would be fun just going for like the highest one every time, right? Well, not every time, but most of the time. Slayers gain attack damage and Omnivant. Overhealing heals the lowest percent health Slayer for 50% of the excess amount. This is going to be a 2-4-6. Dr. Mundo, Shaco, Vayne, Jarvan, Senna, and Zed. Going for 6 Slayer is going to be much easier than going for 6 Rapid Fire because obviously like most of these units, they're like frontline bruiser units. So they're able to sustain with the Omnivamp that you get from it. So I definitely see some 6 Slayer comps in the making. It's just a AD bruiser type of build. Strategist, combat start, allies in the back 2 rows gain damage amp, allies in the front 2 rows gain durability, strategists get triple. We've had strategists in the past. I think before the back row gained AP and the front row gained a shield, But strategists were really fun. It was also a 2-3-4-5. That's going to be Echo, LeBlanc, Yuumi, Nico, and Ziggs. And it's a great splash trait. Again, there are tons of great splash traits in this set. And this one is even more splashable than the one before because like not everyone uses AP. This one gives damage amp. Everyone can use a little bit of damage amp and damage reduction, right? Techies are going to be the next trait. They're the generic AP trait. Techies gain ability power. Enemies hit by their abilities deal 10% less damage for 3 seconds. It's going to be a 2-4-6-8. And if you compare it to Sorcerer from set 13, Sorcerers get the damage reduction effect at 6 Sorcerer, but this time you just get it all the time, but an increased amount at 8. So I think that's their way of kind of balancing out the trait a little bit. But that's going to be Seraphine, Zyra, Shyvana, Veigar, Fiddlesticks, Mordekaiser, Brand, and Viego. Probably going to be doable as a vertical. This reminds me a lot of Arcanist from the past. Maybe Mordekaiser is enough to tank in the front line. Vanguard going to be the last trait. Gain 10% durability while shielded. Combat start and at 50% health, gain a max health shield for 10 seconds, and that scales at a 2-4-6. And that's going to be Silas, Vi, Ras, Skarner, Braum, Jarvan, and Leona. This is just a reprint of previous traits. So the 3 generic tank traits are going to be Bastions, Vanguard, and Bruisers. But that is a lot of traits. Let me know which one was your favorite down in the comments. And of course, if you want to check out each of these individually, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/set14 if you want more info on that. Now for the fun part, we got the champions. Let's start off with the 1-cost, Alistair. He's going to be a Golden Ox Bruiser. His ability is going to be Gilded Endurance. Passive, reduce all incoming damage by 10, 15, and 25 AP. Active, deal AP magic damage to the current target and stun them for 2 seconds. Gonna be a great cheap CC unit that you could probably splash onto a bunch of boards. So if you're going like vertical Bruiser, vertical Golden Ox, you probably want to splash him in, keep him in there because he's gonna be a great trait unit for that because he gives utility without items. Dr. Mundo, 1-cost, Street Demon, Bruiser, and Slayer. Flex on them, just like your TFT rank after watching Bunny Muffin's videos. Passive, gain more max health from all sources, and the active is Flex, healing, and then dealing a bunch of physical damage to the current target. By the way, with some of these numbers that we'll see, like not all these numbers are final, and they're sometimes in different formats. Like, for example, it's not actually 0.3%, it's like 30% when they say this, just like how this isn't 0.02, it's 2%. And this is 130% and this is 20%. It's a weird thing in the formatting, but hopefully like the little images help you see it a little bit better. Next up we have is Jax, Exotech, and Bruiser. His ability is Ion Barrier. Gain a shield for 4 seconds and deal magic damage to adjacent enemies, just a generic 1-cost tank. Maybe he has some carry potential with the Bruisers. I think he does have a hero augment. We'll take a look at that later when we cover the augments. Kindred, Nitro, Rapid Fire, and Marksman. Wait a minute, Rapid Fire and Marksman? That makes Kindred a great splash unit if you're going heavy into AD, just like as an item holder, and then you could use the item remover, move it onto whatever Marksman or Rapid Fire unit you eventually get. Maybe keep her in the whole game because of that with your Nitro trait, but essentially her ability is Rev Up. Fire Wolf at current target, dealing some physical damage. Overkill damage bounces to the nearest enemy. Good caster unit. Ironically enough, I don't think she uses like Rapid Fire that well, but Marksman she could definitely use. It gives a bunch of AD, but probably want like Infinity Edge on her. Probably a good holder for that. Kog'Maw, Boombots, and Rapid Fire. Fire at will for the next 5 seconds. Gain 50% attack speed and attacks deal bonus physical damage. Just another 1-cost item holder. Maybe there is like a reroll Kindred or reroll Kog'Maw build because they're both Rapid Fire. That could be fun to try out. Morgana, Divinicorp, and Dynamo Short Circuit. Hack the target and the nearest non-hacked enemy, dealing AP magic damage over 10 seconds. I'd assume this would be pretty good with a Morello build or like a Morello holder. Obviously, she can be splashable in a bunch of different comps because she is a divine unit, and Dynamo gains mana every couple of seconds, so she will be casting a lot, and it seems like she is a multi-target unit, so Morello obviously going to be pretty good on her. Nidalee, Nitro, and AMP, Charge Claw. Deal some magic damage to the current target and magic damage to the 2 nearest enemies based on how much amp you have, and you also heal per enemy hit. Poppy, Cyberboss, and Bastion, her ability is Buckler Toss. Throw a buckler at the furthest enemy within 4 hexes, dealing damage based on your armor and AP, and it also hits units within 1 hex if you are the Cyberboss. You also gain a shield at the end of it. Seraphine, Anima Squad, and Techie. Her ability is Ping, just like how I'll ping ? When someone hits a 3-star legendary. Fire a sound wave through the current target that deals AP magic damage reduced by each enemy hit. Shaco, Syndicate, and Slayer. Felony Fantastique, no way is that ever relevant to me, right? Passive is gain attack damage for each kill in this game. Active is deal physical damage to the current target, and Kingpin bonus is teleport behind the lowest health enemy within 4 hexes and deal bonus physical damage. If this kills, immediately cast again. So both the reset champion and a huge stacker, there definitely is going to be some sort of Shaco reroll build. I'm really excited to do that because normally like these types of abilities, they don't really put them on 1-cost champions too much. I don't know why, like I mainly see this on like 2-cost and 3-cost champions, so it will be really fun to stack him from the very start of the game, do a hard force reroll, maybe go into 6 Slayer. That would be my guess of what to do with like 3 Syndicate to get the Kingpin bonus. We'll have to see how this build actually plays out, but I'm pretty excited for this one out of all the ones we've seen so far. Haha, get out, because we're doing all the 1-costs. Silas, Anima Squad, and Vanguard, Chains of the Pack. Gain max health based on your ability power and deal magic damage based on your AP and health to the current target. If they die, gain an additional bit of health. Pretty straightforward. Silas was an Anima Squad from before. Maybe when you go vertical Anima Squad, you could splash him in with like the 4-cost or 5-cost Vanguard. I forget which one it was. And use that as kind of like your main tank if you do get an Anima Squad emblem. Vi, Cypher, and Vanguard, Blockchain. Ah man, this is going to cause a lot of bots to comment on my YouTube video, I guess. Gain shield that rapidly decays over 4 seconds. Vi's next attack deals physical damage. Zyra, Street Demon, and Techie, Stroke of Brilliance. Just like every single one of my videos, send a large vine towards the current target, stunning them for 1 second and dealing a bunch of magic damage. Send a smaller vine to the nearest target that deals magic damage as well. So this is both a stun unit and an AoE unit. So obviously if you build a red buff early on, like I'd definitely drop it on Zyra. She reminds me a lot of Zyra from last set because like she was a sorcerer last set. This time she is a techie, which is pretty much the same thing, and she also has like a stun effect. Pretty nice stuff. But let's move on to the 2-cost. Darius, Syndicate, and Bruiser, Kneecapper. Heal some health, then deal some magic, then deal some physical damage and also sunder enemies within 1 hex for 6 seconds. The Kingpin bonus is increase the ability range to 2 hexes, but the damage is reduced based on how many hexes away they are. And you also heal for each enemy hit. Seems like a pretty solid tank if you ask me. Echo is going to be a street demon and strategist. Paintover, you heal and you also deal magic damage to your current target. Graves is golden ox and executioner. Buckshot of Midas, he has a passive, attacks fire 5 projectiles in a cone that deal AD physical damage, and Graves also casts every 2 attacks. It reminds me of Zeri, the 2-cost, and his active is dash to the target and quickly fire 2 empowered shells that deal a bunch of physical damage per projectile. Is Graves going to be the unit for golden ox because he's also an executioner, right? So he's going to be like a high damage unit. Ideally, he'd be getting a bunch of killing blows so that you get the golden ox trait to kind of farm a bunch of gold. It would make a lot of sense to combine him like that. Alawi, Anima Squad, and Bastion, Bionic Battle Bear. She can heal, she deals damage, AoE damage at that, and also reduces their magic resistance for the rest of combat. So a lot of Anima Squad effects are like deal physical damage or like deal magic damage based on XYZ. So I guess maybe when you take Alawi or run Alawi with Anima Squad, you could kind of combine that with leaning more into the magic damage effects. Jin is Exotech, Marksman, and Dynamo, so he's going to be like a caster from the back line, it seems. Logic Bomb, fire a bouncing grenade that hits 4 enemies, dealing physical damage and sundering them, and the 4th bounce actually returns to the initial target and deals even more damage. So yeah, he's definitely going to be more caster focused. Definitely want IE on him, maybe even a Shojin, we'll have to see. LeBlanc, Cypher, and Strategist, Data Spike, send 5 sigils altering between the current target and the nearest enemy, each dealing magic damage, and every cast send 1 more sigil. So it's a stacking unit. Definitely need a strong front line with your LeBlanc. Probably want something like Archangel, Hextech Gunblade if you do decide to build around LeBlanc reroll. Nefari, Exotech, and AMP Alpha Protocol. Gain Omnivamp is their passive, and then the active is dealing physical damage to the current target, then summoning packmates that also deal physical damage, and based on your AMP, alphas deal even more physical damage to the current target. So casting base unit, has the built-in Omnivamp, so you don't really need to gear her up for that. Next one up we have is Ras, Divinicorp, and Vanguard, Reaping Slash. And Ras, Divinicorp bonus is armor and MR, makes sense because he is a Vanguard. But knock the target into the air for 1.75 seconds. Over the duration, heal and deal AD damage to the target. Good generic CC splash unit that you could fit into almost any comp. Shyvana, Nitro, Bastion, and Techie. Her ability is Burnout. First cast is every second, and for the rest of combat, heal health and deal damage to adjacent enemies, and you also gain max health and also gain damage amp as well. It's kind of like a sustain tank. Works well with the Bastion trait because you should ideally be kept alive by the Bastion effect, where like the first 10 seconds you gain bonus armor and MR, and then that allows her to hopefully stack up some health regen so she lasts longer in the fight. Skarner is Boombot and Vanguard missile defense. Gain a shield for 3 seconds and dredge up a missile. When the shield ends, hurl the missile at a group of most enemies within 2 hexes, dealing magic damage to the centermost enemy and 50% of the damage to enemies adjacent to them. Twisted Fate, Syndicate, Rapid Fire. His ability is Ace High. Passive is gain 3 ability power each attack, so I'm guessing you like that works really well with Rapid Fire, obviously, but do you want a Rage Blade with it? Normally with Rapid Fires, like they don't typically build Rage Blade because you already get so much from the trait. But with TF, since he has this effect, like maybe you still want it. Throw a card at the current target and the nearest target, dealing a bunch of magic damage, and with the Kingpin bonus, it throws a random special card. It actually throws all 3 special guards at 3 nearby enemies. Red card hits enemies in 1 hex. Blue card deals 50% of its damage as true damage. And rarely you get a yellow card, which grants gold. I still miss the set 1 Twisted Fate, where he had red card, which was AoE, which gave mana to units around him. And obviously the stun card. That build was so fun to play. I really miss that a lot. I don't think they're ever going to bring it back. Vayne, Anima Squad, and Slayer. Bat Bolts rapidly fire 3 attacks. First 2 deal bonus true damage, and the final attack deals even more bonus true damage. That's an odd unit. Not really a caster, but like does rely on these attacks. Like it reminds me a little bit of Twitch, but not really. Done in a very different way. We'll have to see. I'm guessing she's just an AD item holder for Anima Squad if they have an AD carry later on. Veigar, Cyber Boss, and Techie. Cyber Supremacy. Deal magic damage to the current target, and if you are the same star level as the target, deal 20% true damage. If you are a higher star level, deal 33% true damage. Final form is deal magic damage to targets adjacent enemies as well. Obviously, gonna work really, really well in a reroll comp. Braum, Syndicate, Vanguard, and Protection Racket is the ability. This is the first 3 costs that we're covering. Gain a shield for 4 seconds. When it breaks, deal magic damage to the 3 closest enemies and chill them for 3 seconds. Chill is just like a attack speed debuff. Kingpin bonus is gain 100 armor and MR. Every 2 seconds, Braum's next attack deals bonus magic damage. Draven, Cypher, and Rapid Fire. Cash Hack. Hurl 2 massive axes at the most enemies in a line, dealing physical damage before returning. Damage is reduced by 20% for each enemy hit. Elise is Nitro and Dynamo. Fire on all cylinders. Fire 4 lasers at the current target and 4 more split between the 2 nearest enemies, each dealing magic damage and reducing magic resist for the rest of combat. Fiddlesticks is Boombot and Techie. His ability is Air. For 3 seconds, tethered to the closest 3 enemies, dealing magic damage per second split between them. And tethers apply a shred and heal Fiddlesticks based on the damage dealt. Galio is going to be a Cypher Bastion. Stonewall, gain durability for 3 seconds. Afterwards, heal and send a whirlwind at the enemy within 3 hexes that dealt the most damage to Galio during that time. It deals magic damage and stuns them. So that's going to be it's like a targeted stun. Going to be devastating against melee carries, in my opinion. Gragas, Divinicorp, and Bruiser, Corporate Mixer. Heal some health, then throw a cast at the largest group of enemies within 3 hexes, dealing some magic damage. Jarvan, Golden Ox, Vanguard, and Slayer. Half Moon Sweep. Strike the most enemies in a semicircle, gaining a shield for 4 seconds, and even more based on enemy hit. And then you also deal physical damage to enemies hit and reduce their armor for the rest of combat. Ooh, that's going to be pretty good as like a supportish tank unit. It's also like Vanguard and Slayer. Combining those 2 traits could be very devastating, because you get the tankiness from Vanguard and you have the lifesteal from Slayer. It essentially has like built-in Bloodthirster if you think about it. Jinx is a street demon and marksman. Rampant vandalism, kind of like when you walk by a block with a lot of closed shops with those like metal curtains. That's what Jinx does, I guess. But fire 5 rockets at random enemies within 2 hexes of the current target. Each rocket deals physical damage. Each cast fires an additional rocket. Mordekaiser, Exotech, Bruiser, and Techie. His ability is Antivirus. Do people still use those anymore? Like, I don't know if they actually do anything, to be honest with you. I guess I shouldn't be giving away my tech stack, but gain a shield for 4 seconds, slam the current target, dealing a bunch of magic damage in a 2 hex line, and you also stun all enemies hit. That seems really good. I guess it's only a 2 hex line, never mind. I thought it was like AoE around the shield that explodes or something like that. Okay, yeah, that's pretty fair. It's pretty similar to a lot of 3-cost tanks that we've seen recently, where they have like a small AoE stun. Rengar, Street Demon, Executioner, his ability is freestyle. Heal some health, leap to the lowest health enemy, and you deal a bunch of physical damage, then strike 2 times, dealing even more physical damage. Each cast increase the leap range by 1 hex, so he'll eventually be jumping all over the map. Gonna be a pretty cool ability, to be honest. Obviously works really well with the Executioner trait because you get a bonus when people are lower than 30% health. Senna is a Divinicorp Slayer. Ion Beam. Passive is attacks deal physical damage to enemies adjacent to the target. Active is fire a beam 2 hexes beyond the current target, dealing physical damage to enemies hit. Obviously, red buff going to be a great item on Senna. I wonder if there's like a red buff Rage Blade combo, just get her to attack very, very often with this passive to kind of abuse that. Varus, Exotech, Executioner, Malware Chain. Fire a chain that deals magic damage and stuns them for 1 second. The chain links to 3 closest enemies, dealing magic damage to each. That's a really weird unit. Like, it's like a utility unit, but I would think that you want damage on this guy in some way. Maybe he's just going to be a support unit for Exotech and Executioner. That's normally how stun units kind of work, but maybe there's some like Shojin build that gets him to cast really often. It's also important to note that he is an AP champion, not an AD champion like he usually is in the past. Yuumi, Anima Squad, AMP, and Strategist. Yuum AI. Passive is gain 3 mana every second. That's going to be based on your amp. And active is launch a magic missile at the current target that bounces to nearby enemies. Deal magic damage to the current target and to the other, marking both of them. If they're already marked, deal bonus damage. Annie is going to be Golden Ox, AMP, and her ability is Goldilocks. Throw a fireball at the current target that deals some magic damage, and based on her AMP, you also get mini fireballs split between the target and nearby enemies, dealing even more magic damage. By the way, she is going to be our first 4-cost. Every 4 casts, instead, summon Tibbers next to the current target, dealing magic damage to enemies within 1 hex. So you want her to cast as much as possible. Definitely need mana items on her. I'm actually curious how to build Annie. It might not be as straightforward as some of the other champions we've seen so far. Aphelios, Golden Ox, Marksman, Moonlight Vigil. Fire a Moonblast at the largest group of enemies that deals physical damage to enemies within 2 hexes. Equip 4 Chakram, plus 1 more for each enemy hit by the blast. That lasts for 6 attacks longer. And then you deal bonus physical damage to each. Brand is going to be a Street Demon Techie. His ability is going to be Paint Bomb. Throw a Paint Bomb at the largest group of enemies, dealing magic damage to enemies within 1 hex, and also even more magic damage to the nearest 4 enemies. Cho'Gath's going to be a Boombot and Bruiser. Sonic Scream. Fire Disorienting Blast in a cone, dealing magic damage, and you gain max health and get bigger, and increases the size of future sound blast. So he's kind of like a, not like permanent stacking, but like within fight stacking. So you definitely want him to live quite long. Kind of reminds me of Dr. Mundo, but you also increase the size of future sound blasts. So he could eventually just like hit the whole board, which would be kind of neat. Leona is an Anima Squad and Vanguard Solar Flare, just like every time I go outside. Gain durability for 4 seconds, deal some magic damage to the largest clump of enemies within 2 hexes, and then stun the center enemy for 2 seconds. Enemies damaged by this ability take bonus magic damage from allies for a bunch of seconds. So I'm guessing Anima Squad is more magic damage focused. Like, it's weird because when I played it, I saw like a lot of effects dealt physical damage, but based on Leona and someone else we covered before, they like both lower magic resist or like increase magic damage. I'm leaning more towards like a magic damage build. Misfortune is a Syndicate Dynamos. Her ability is Street Sweeper. Fire 8 waves of bullets towards the largest clump of enemies over 2 seconds. Enemies struck take physical damage from the first bullet of each wave, and 25% less for each other bullet in the same wave. The Kingpin bonus is fire 3 more waves, and bullets also pierce. Nigo's going to be a Street Demon and Strategist. Pop-up Mural, gain some shield, create an expanding zone that pops 3 times, dealing magic damage to enemies hit. The third pop chills enemies for 3 seconds. Sejuani, blue screen. You gain more armor and MR from all sources, and you also throw an EMP at the closest enemy that explodes after 2 seconds. It deals some magic damage to enemies and has a 3 hex stun. So this is very similar to Sejuani's we've seen in the past. There's definitely going to be a lot of positioning text with this. A lot of people, like if you ever have a dash unit, like you'll want to make that dash unit be the target of Sejuani so that they kind of turn around to like a weird point so that she doesn't hit as many units. So she's probably going to be the most important unit to position around in this set. Vex is going to be a Divinicorp and Executioner. Her ability is Retribution. Gain some Omnivamp, and 80% of your overhealing from Retribution's damage is converted to bonus true damage to its primary target. Active is send a shadow to the target, dealing magic damage to all enemies it passes through. The shadow then explodes, dealing magic damage to the target and to enemies hit within 1 hex. Zaya, Anima Squad, and Marksman. Her ability is Buffer Overflow. Impales 6 feathers into the current target that each deal physical damage. When the target dies, the feather seeks out nearby enemies within 2 hexes, each dealing physical damage. Next we have is Zed, Cypher, and Slayer. Cutthroat Business, so that's an interesting name because Cypher is the lose streak one. But let's see what it does. Throw a shuriken at the furthest unmarked enemy that deals magic damage and marks them, then become untargetable, teleport to them, and summon shadows on every other marked enemy. Deal physical damage to adjacent enemies, while shadows deal physical damage to adjacent enemies as well. So it's a mix of magic and physical damage all in one. I'm guessing he scales primarily from AD though. I wonder what you actually want on this person then. I guess some lifesteal kind of helps with both, because I'm assuming Zed is going to be a melee. Zeri, Exotech, Rapid Fire, Hyper Thread Rush, dash to nearby locations so quickly and untargetable Echo lingers. The Echo attacks as if it were Zeri, but deals reduced damage. Echoes last 5 seconds and disappear when Zeri dies. I'm guessing this is like the Rage Blade unit of the set, because the Echoes are just going to go crazy once they're stacked up. But this is going to be the 4-cost Rapid Fire of the set, probably going to be the unit you build Exotech around also. I wonder what Rapid Fire you could kind of pair with this. Are there any 5-cost Rapid Fire? I forget. No, Zeri is the latest one, so you have to pair like one of these bozos with it. Maybe Twisted Fate or something like that. Next up we have is Ziggs. He's going to be a cyber boss and strategist. Bomber Yordle. Throw a bomb that hits the most enemies in a plus shape within attack range, dealing magic damage to enemies within 1 hex of the center and magic damage to enemies further away. The final form is hitting the entire row and column. So obviously very good AoE champion, AP based. Strategist means you could splash him in a bunch of different builds. Cyber Boss also means you could kind of splash him into a bunch of different builds because he doesn't need that much to kind of get going. Maybe 2 Cyber Boss, 2 Strategists plus something else and use him as a complementary unit, maybe as a emblem holder or something like that. Aurora, Anima Squad, Dynamo, Pierce the Veil. This is going to be our first 5-cost. On first cast, swap places with the leftmost champion on your bench and continue fighting. The champion gains attack speed based on their AP. If the swap champion dies, return to the board. So it kind of gives her like a pseudo invulnerability. And then after that, you can also teleport to hit the most enemies in a line, dealing magic damage to each one, and then a bunch of AP split amongst all enemies. So it's got a good like single focus and also AoE effect there. Aurora cannot swap places with another Aurora. Garen, God of the Net, Ban Wave. Gain a shield for 2 seconds and deal physical damage to the current target and send a wave that deals physical damage to enemies hit. If the wave hits 2 or fewer enemies, gain 50 mana. Kabuko, Cyber Boss, and Bruiser. Ability is going to be Game Over. The passive is attacks deal bonus magic damage, and at a certain health threshold, you also gain a shield decaying over 8 seconds, and you also get attack speed, omnivamp, and mana. The active part is briefly gain durability, then pick up a nearby enemy, knocking up all enemies within 1 hex for 1.5 seconds, then slam down, dealing magic damage to the target and AP, and part of the target's max health as magic damage to all enemies hit. And the final form increases this to 2 hexes. Renekton, Overlord, Divinicorp, and Bastion. His ability is Dominus. Deal physical damage to enemies within 2 hexes and burn and wound them for 5 seconds, and you also gain max health. So remember, Overlord allows him to eat someone else, right? So you want someone with a ton of health. So it's gotta be someone expensive. Maybe you could run him in a Bruiser comp, put Bruiser emblem on Renekton, and then eat another Bruiser. That could be pretty wild. The first cast is enter a frenzy mode where attacks strike twice, dealing physical damage to 2 and also dash to new targets. On second cast, enter a frenzy mode, which now strikes thrice, dealing physical damage, and this one cannot be cast again though. Samira is going to be the next champion. We have Street Demon and AMP Demon Trigger. Dash towards the target and fire a volley of 30 bullets based on your AMP. Over 2 seconds, split between enemies within 3 hexes. Each bullet shreds 4 armor and deals a bunch of physical damage, reduced by 20% per hex distance from Samira. When the volley ends, dash back to safety while dealing physical damage to the current target, and for the duration of the ability, Samira is unstoppable and has Omnivamp. So she essentially has like built-in Slayer, built-in Quicksilver, and essentially just goes crazy. So just go full glass cannon on her, I'm assuming. Urgot is Boombot and Executioner. That's like pure damage. It's like damage trait here, damage trait there, nothing else. Fear Beyond Death. For 5 seconds, gain attack speed and lock on to the lowest percent health enemy within 5 hexes. Attacks also fire 3 rockets, each dealing physical damage. Each cast, the first time a locked on enemy falls beneath a certain health threshold, reel them in, execute them, and grind into parts. I wonder how that damage contributes to the Boombot thing, because like you could do more booms while you're executing people. Kind of nice stuff. Viego is Soul Killer, Golden Ox, and Techie. His ability is Hollow Blade. His passive is when units die, absorb their soul and heal 6% health. Active is jump to the largest clump of enemies within 2 hexes, dealing magic damage to them and the adjacent enemies. And you also shred all enemies hit for 4 seconds. Zac is going to be a virus, replicating malware. Passive is at 10% health, split into 2 copies with 50% health. And then his active is bounce 3 times on nearby enemies. Each bounce deals magic damage and stuns for 1 second and heals Zac as well. So obviously stack a lot of health on this guy, stack a lot of defensive items on him, and he's going to be just a good generic late game tank for any team. What's your favorite unit so far though? Mine, probably one of the AMP units or the Cyber Boss units. Maybe something like Zed. He kind of is like a mix of damage. That seems kind of cool. Maybe they change that later though. Or maybe it's a typo, because sometimes they typo this stuff. But if I had to guess or like pick one out of a hat, it might be Veigar. He's a 2-cost unit, good reroller, and based on his star level you get bonuses. I wonder if there's a way to get worth the wait Veigar. We'll go over Augments in just a second, but him as like a 4-cost would be absolutely nuts, because then he'll just be dealing a lot of damage to like pretty much everyone. But let's go over the Augments now. So this is split up into 2 sections. We have the completely brand new Augments and the reused or recycled Augments. If you go to a car dealership, they'll call them pre-owned or something like that. But I'm going to go over all the new Augments, and then since there are 300 total Augments, if you add up both the new ones and the reused ones, that's a lot, right? And we don't have to go over something like bulky buddies, you know, because like we've all seen this multiple times before and it pretty much already exists. So I'm only going to go over the new Augments and some like weird returning ones that I think are special mentions. But let's just start up at the top. We have 10,000 IQ as the first one. That's going to be a gold tier augment, and every 5 rounds with strategist active, bet whether you'll win or lose more. So they're introducing gambling in TFT. If you're correct, gain 5 gold and a completed item anvil, and gain a LeBlanc and Echo. So you have to really know your board strength. I've always said this in the past, the best way to improve is to know how good a board actually is compared to everyone else's, and you do that by predicting who will win or lose the next fight. This takes this to the next level because you gain like a huge bonus. This is a gold tier augment. So what do you want from a gold tier augment? You generally want like 1.5 items. That's a good benchmark. And that means you need to get this correct at least twice, because this is going to be delayed. This is every 5 rounds. So most gold augments, they give 1.5 items right away immediately. This one, you have to guess the first one, and then you get like 1 item and 5 gold, which I guess is like kind of similar to 1.5 items because this is an anvil also. But since it's delayed, you want to get at least 2 correct. That's going to be pretty tough to do. I guess you also gain a LeBlanc and an Echo, but if you're going strategist, you definitely do want to go for this, I'm guessing, just based on getting champions and getting upgrades, but gonna be very tricky to use. I think this one's really fun though. Adaptive Strikes, this one is gonna be a hero augment at silver. Gain a Jax, your strongest Jax's attack deals bonus magic damage every 3rd attack, which gets stronger each time. His ability grants attack speed. So maybe you want to do some sort of Rage Blade build. Maybe the built-in attack speed he gains is enough and then you don't end up needing it. You definitely need some lifesteal items, so probably like a Bloodthirster. Quicksilver, definitely going to be a must build. So if I had to guess, it'd be like Quicksilver, BT, then Rage Blade or Titan's Resolve, something like that would probably work pretty well. Alter Ego, this is going to be a gold augment. Gain a Ras, your strongest Ras enters Shadow Assassin form, and his ability is replaced with a dash and 1 hex spin. If it kills, he immediately casts again. So you could turn your tanky Ras into an assassin with this hero augment at gold. Anima Squad Circlet, they introduced like a new thing. They're like circlets, crests, and crowns. I hope I'm remembering this correctly, but the circlet essentially is like a special type of emblem. I've gotten the Techie Circlet before, where the emblem gives you the Techie trait, but also gives you bonus ability power. So I think all these circlets are just enhanced emblems. So that's why it's a prismatic, and then like Anima Squad Crown is also a prismatic, and both of them give you an emblem. But the Anima Squad Crown gives you Adaptive Helm and an Alawi. This one only gives you a Yumi, but that fact is kind of made up for because the emblem is going to be enhanced. There's also the crest still, so that's going to be at gold, but it's the same thing for Bastions. Blue Battery is going to be the next one. Prismatic, gain a blue buff. Your units gain 15 ability power after casting their ability, gain 10 mana. So it's essentially just like a cracked up blue buff. Board of Directors, that's going to be a gold. If you have 3 or fewer Divinicore champions, their bonuses are increased by 50%, plus 10% for each stage. Gain a Ras and a Morgana. So this one's going to work well if you obviously only run 3 or fewer, but then you get less of the bonus, you know, but it's kind of like handpicking your Divinicorp units. You could choose only the stats you want, and then you save like a bunch of unit slots because you don't have to go deep for the bonuses. Boombots, it's got the circlets and crest things. Bruiser, same thing. Button mash, silver, gain a Poppy. Your Poppy's abilities is replaced with 3-hit wallop, so you turn Poppy into a damage dealing unit. Capacitor, this one's going to be gold. When techies cast, grant the lowest health tech shield equal to 200% of mana spent, gain a Vhagar and a Zyra. Cease and desist, gain a Vi. Your strongest Vi gains attack speed and her ability dashes to the furthest target, stunning and dealing bonus physical damage. Chemtech Overdrive, open 3 portals to Zon on random hexes in the second row. Any unit that starts combat in a portal gains health and attack speed and drops 1 gold on death. This one's very interesting because you're essentially only buffing 3 units, and it might not be like a purely backline unit. Like if you normally put someone on the last row or the back row, you don't want to put them up there, so they can't even use a buff that well. So this one's going to be best probably on like frontline damage dealer comps where you want to put them on the second row, but like you kind of want them to die also, or I guess this is like an insurance policy. It's like worst case if they die you get a gold. This one's kind of tricky. I don't know if this one's like, maybe we have to change the numbers a little bit, but it does seem fun to kind of try out. I don't know if it's going to be that good with these current numbers, but obviously if you make the numbers higher then it'll be good, right? Again, they're going to be coming out with like a zillion patches during PBE before it finally releases on live, but hopefully this one's kind of fun to try out. Cognitive Implant. Your techies gain 5 ability power increased by 1 for every 2 takedowns. Gain a Vhagar and Zyra. So this one, you need to get it early, and you need a hard force techies if you get it. It's just a stacking trait. Cower Weaklings. Cyber Boss abilities reduce a target's max health by 15%. Cyber Bosses take 15% less damage from enemies with less max health. Gain a Poppy and Vhagar. Cut Purse. Executioners have a 7% chance to drop gold when their attacks critically strike. Jesus, you could get a lot of gold from that, right? I guess not that much. Like if you have 100% crit, you get 7% chance every auto. Okay, maybe it's not that much, but it's not that little either, right? We'd have to compare it to Gambler's Blade. I don't know which one gives more because obviously this one works on all your executioners. I have a feeling this one is either going to be really, really good or really, really bad, one or the other. Cyber Deck, on combat start, up to 3 of your Exotech units with 2 items gain an ideal Exotech item. Gain a Nefari and Jax. That one's pretty good. Like you just have to build 2 best in slot items, and then you don't even have to care about getting your perfect Exotech item that game because obviously you can't change them. You get 3 preset ones out of the 7. But now you could get the tailored ones. Divine Ascension. After 12 seconds, your Divinicorp champions ascend, gaining 30% health and 45% attack speed. Gain a Ross and a Morgana. And then we have the Circlets and Crowns for Divinicorp. Dominance. Prismatic. For every 1 surviving champion after winning a player combat, gain 1 gold, and you also just gain 16 XP at the start. This is a new sort of like super level win streak augment that you could get at the start of the game, and you could get a lot of gold from this, but obviously you have to win every round. Just like play very aggressively when you get this. I want to try this one out for sure. Dummy with a gun. This is gold. With Syndicate active, your training dummies shoot enemies. Every 2 times they attack, grant the Kingpins 3% attack damage and ability power. Gain a training dummy with a Darius and a Twist of Fate. We have the Dynamo trait stuff. We have the Executioners, Exotech, Flatline. Marksman execute enemies under 12% health. Every time a marksman executes, all marksmen gain 8% attack speed, gain a Jin and a Kindred. This is good, I guess, if you have like marksmen that want both attack damage and attack speed. I'm guessing that's most of them, but like I think most marksmen are going to be more of like crit oriented builds. We'll have to see though. Freestyling, clear all painted hexes. When street demons start combat on a non-tagged hex, tag it. After all hexes are tagged, gain 30 gold and also gain 3 street demons. This one's kind of like a delayed econ trait that's also a trait. That's also a trait augment. I kind of want to try this one out. Like obviously you're going to be like super weak because you have no hexes at the start, but like after 1 turn you gain most of them back, right? Golden Fleece. Each Golden Ox drops 1 gold after fighting 2 rounds. Your max interest is 7. Gain a Graves, Alistair, and 0 gold. The plus one is you gain 4 gold. So that one's like, yeah, that's one way to get gold, right? If you get Golden Ox or if you play Golden Ox, which we were talking about before. I definitely want to try out this trait. I mean, I want to try out every trait and every comp, but like this one does seem more interesting compared to the other ones. Then we have the crests and circlets and crowns. Hostile takeover. Ciphers gain 50% of its combat bonus now. Gain 200% intel from kills, but only 20% from losses. Gain a Draven. So this one is like a win streak fortune trait. I don't know how that would work. Hunter Killer Missile. Every 10 Boombot rockets fire an HK missile. All right, we're definitely losing a lot of social credit score for this video. At the highest health enemy that deals 600% more damage, gain a Kog'Maw and a Skarner. Keep your friends close. Syndicate Kingpins gain 10% attack speed and 120 health for each adjacent ally in their row. Allies gain 175 health. Gain a Twisted Fate and a Darius. Lethal rerouting. Slayers above 50% health gain 20% attack damage, while under 50% they gain 15% Omnivamp, gain a Vayne and a Shaco. Like, most of these are just trait augments, like, understandable, right? Because they have to add all of them. Lifelong learning. I guess this is a new one that's not trait related. Your units gain 1.5% health every round. If they survive combat, they gain an additional 2.5 ability power and 2.5% attack damage. Okay, now we're talking. It's just like a stacking prismatic augment from the very start. That's going to be hard, though, because let's think about it. Let's say you get this at stage 2, which I'm guessing is the only time it's offered. You need to survive combat to get the buff, and it's a prismatic trait, but it doesn't give you anything to start off with. But in a prismatic lobby, how are you going to stack up? That's going to be very difficult to do. I mean, I'm assuming the bonus is worth it after a certain amount of rounds, but you have to like win, and you have to have a lot of units survive combat. So you can't just win by one unit. You have to like completely dominate someone, right? But I guess you do get the health every round guaranteed, but obviously you probably want this other stuff as well. Liquidate, which is gold. When you trade for Cypher Intel, your board and bench is sold for 175% value, and you gain 4 Reforgers, gain a Draven. Okay, that's a little wild. Marksman stuff, Memory Blank, gain a Jhin and Morgana. Dynamos gain 4% damage amp after they spend 7,000 mana, gain a Mura mana and an Aurora. That one's gonna be like 7,000 mana is a lot, right? Like, let's say you have an average of 6 units on the board, like when you get this, and like depending on what level you are, obviously it goes up or down. Each unit spends maybe like, I don't even know what the average is. Let's say 120, because sometimes a unit casts with 100 mana, sometimes they don't because they have to spend it, right? And then your backline units, maybe they cast twice or something like that. So 120 times 6 was that 720. So it's going to take 10 rounds to get that. Is that even worth it? You just get an artifact item. I mean, you do get the Jhin and Morgana at the start, and you do get a little bit of damage amp, but this isn't that much, right? Like, so you get some gold and like a placebo bonus there, but then you get a delayed artifact item and a 5 cost. I guess the Aurora does make it worth it because she is like the 5 cost that you specifically need, right? I don't know how much that's worth to me. 10 rounds is a long time though. New high score. Cyber bosses increase their score when they deal damage. When they reach the next high score, they gain 4% attack speed and bonus loot. Gain a Veigar and Poppy. Overclocked. Your AMP champions with 3 or more items gain 1 amp. Gain 4 rerolls, a Nefari and a Nidalee. So this is definitely for reroll AMP builds. Pirates, which is a prismatic. Your units have a rare chance to drop powerful loot when they kill an enemy champion. This is a new take on Spoils of War, where this is just a rare chance, but it drops something really good. Again, with prismatic traits, it's kind of hard to do that. You have to have like a super high roll start to do this. Polish Chrome. When you 3-star Nitro champions, they gain 16% AD, 25 AP, and grant 10 gold. Gain a Kindred and Nidalee. Power leveling. Anima Squad takedowns have a 20% chance to drop an XP orb that sells for 1 XP. Anima Squad units gain 2% attack speed for each of your player levels. Gain a Seraphine and a Lowy. So this is hyper leveling. That sounds pretty fun. We have the rapid fire stuff, reactive shell. Vanguards gain 8% health. When the Vanguard shield ends, gain 50% of the initial shield as magic damage to the current target. Gain a Skarner and a Vi. Reinforcing Skeletor. When a bruiser dies, it permanently gains 40 health. Gain a Darius and Alistar. This one's kind of weird, right? Because your bruisers, like, I mean, they are tanks, so tanks do die, right? But like, you want them to live as long as possible. Maybe you want like all of them to die. Like, it's gonna be hard to set that up like super optimally, but it does seem pretty fun to get like a huge bruiser with like infinite health really late in the game. Maybe even your like normally bad bruisers turn good because they die so much and gain a lot of bonus health. Self-destruct. Before dying, Boombots jump onto the nearest enemy and deal 350 physical damage, plus 35% dealt by the rockets to adjacent enemies. Gain a Kog'Maw and Skarner. It's weird, don't Boombots do magic damage? So this one's mixing it up a little bit. Shock treatment. Prismatic. Gain a static shiv and another after 5-player combats. Your static shivs grant 10% more attack speed, and their chain lightning effects deal 40 to 125% more damage based on stage level. Shock treatment plus. This is after 3-player combats. Slayers got their stuff too. Spare parts. Gain a Nitro Hex turret that has 50% of your total chrome. Gain a Shyvana. Speed kills. Yeah, that is true. All sorts of speed, right? Rapid fire champions start at 2 stacks and can go up to 20. If you win combat within 18 seconds, gain 2 gold. Gain a Twist of Fate on Kog'Maw. Yeah, don't do speed. Probably not good for you. Strategists You got their stuff. Street Demons, same thing. Support Spire. After 8 seconds in combat, a Support Spire grants an Anima Squad a shield, attack speed, or stuns all enemies. Oh, whoa. That sounds pretty good, right? You also gain 3 Anima Squad champions. Yeah, sure, why not? Syndicate's got their stuff. Tagging Spree. Signature Street Demon Hexes grant 20% attack speed, gain 3 Street Demons, and 2 spray can items that create signature Street Demon Hexes. I'm noticing a pattern. Did they add like 2 or 3 trait augments? Normally they just have 1, right? That's actually a lot of stuff. You got the techie stuff, the Chug Bug, one of my favorite songs out there. Gain 1 Gragas. Your strongest Gragas' attacks have a chance to knock back and deal bonus magic damage. His ability heals and empowers his next attack. The +1, you get 2 Gragas's. Titanic Strength. This is a remake of an old one, but like a twist. Your team gains 1.25% of their max health as AD and AP. Transference. When AMP champions die, the nearest AMP champ gains 1 amp until the end of combat. Gain a Neferi and a Nidalee. Transitor. When Bastion's start of combat bonus ends, 50% of it converts into AD and AP, and they gain 30% attack speed. Okay, this sounds horrible. Why do you need your tanks to deal damage? Like, I can't see this one being good. Is there a Bastion carry that we missed? I don't actually like have every single champion memorized because like obviously like this is just the preview, right? But let me know if you remember any Bastions that have carry potential that could actually use this. This is a very weird situation. Trial Run, gain an Exotech Golem with a copy of your Exotech items. It gains 5% health and 12% attack damage per Exotech star level. Gain a Jin and a Neferi. Unstable Evolution. Your champions randomly gain one of the following when they are starred up. 300 health, 30% attack speed, 30% attack damage, or 30 ability power. Very random, holy cow. Imagine you have an AD champ, you just get AP, you're just like, dang. I guess it's low chance, right? But if that happens, do you just like sell it and like go for a new one? Like what if it's a 4 cost? That's gonna be hard to do. Vanguard's got their stuff. And then the last one we have is Wolf Unchained. Gain a Silas. Your strongest Silas ability deals more damage and recasts on kill, but his health no longer scales with ability power. So those are all the new augments. A lot of the returning augments, like again, you could check this whole list out on bunnymuffins.lol/set14 if you really want to. I do recommend doing it if you want to get a full picture of everything that's coming back. But I want to do a special shout out to some cool ones that are returning. Binary Airdrop, probably one of my favorite augments. Huge value in that one. Scrolling down a bit, we have BRB. I'm more of a fan of AFK, but they're keeping BRB in there, which means you can't have both. We have Call to Chaos still, Caretakers still. All right, let's scroll down a little bit more. Cruel Pact is making a comeback. This is probably one of my favorite augments of all time. Definitely excited to do this again because they haven't added this back in a while. They've been trying to replace it with different ones, but it hasn't hit the same at all. But buying XP costs 6 player health instead of 4 gold, heal 3 player health before each player combat. It's great for farming fourths in my opinion. Not much after that, but yeah. You generally play like a reroll comp with this and it's really fun to do in my opinion. Cybernetics definitely going to be good with Exotech stuff. Like, wouldn't that be like too good of a combo? Cybernetic plus Exotech, you just get so many free items. Got to be a thing there. But we haven't seen the actual cybernetic augments in a while. Endless Horde making a comeback. This one's super fun. You just get like a bunch of units. It wasn't that great in my opinion. Like, it was either OP or the worst one ever, depending on how they balanced it. Without augment data, that's going to be a little tricky to kind of check out. Final Reserves is making a comeback. This is the first time you would be eliminated, instead remain alive. After this happens, gain 70 XP and set your gold to 90. So you want to like sack your whole game and excess gold is converted into XP. But essentially you want to spend all your gold because you don't want like more XP. You want to like line it up with whatever level you're trying to hit. Get there exactly and then roll down, do a big roll down, and hopefully you find your team before the next round starts. Find Vintage, I mentioned this before, but completed items left on your bench for 4 rounds transform into support anvils. This should be making a comeback. There used to be builds with Zizirot portals with the divine trait, and that was like an OP combo. Maybe they have them back. I think those were the main ones I wanted to cover. Let me just do a quick scan. I'm the carry now, immovable. Like, yeah, those are pretty generic ones that are pretty much in every set we've seen. I don't know why they keep long distance pals in this. I don't know a single person that likes this augment. I think it's good in like reroll comps or like low resource portals where you can't like itemize everyone, but it used to be good. But in the recent sets I've seen it in, it's kind of taken a back seat. No scout, no pivots coming back. That one's pretty fun. There are a lot of comps that we do want to force from the start of the game because there are a lot of stacking elements in this game. So like imagine a Shaka with no scout, no pivot. You just get him stacking both from his passive and from this every single turn. Would be pretty cool stuff. We have Pandora's items still, Freaky Friday still, Placebo. Scrolling down. Oh, Recombobulator's back? I thought they were removing this one. Okay. Pretty nice stuff. Champions on your board permanently transform into champions 1 cost higher. Very fun to do. You also gain removers to move the items around. It's actually probably going to be better now because we get so many more removers, not just from the thing, but like from the neutral rounds as well. But I think that's going to be it for the augments, which also means that we should kind of summarize everything that's been going on. So obviously, the new mechanic, the hack stuff, pretty neat. It's like a new take on the augments, and it's like kind of tailored. Traits, some of them are new, some of them are recycled. I guess someone can do the math on like what percent is each. Champions, like overall, like obviously they stay within the same themes. Like there's always one CC champion at 4 costs, that's AoE. There's like a 3 cost tank that has like a small AoE stun. There carry units in all sorts of levels, but they just do their abilities a little bit different. Again, that's why I'm most excited about the AMP, because it's a way to like improve their ability in a way that's not just like adding more damage or something like that. So that's probably going to be the trait that I'm going to be looking forward to the most. But let me know down in the comments, what do you think about all this stuff? What are you most looking forward to trying? Again, it comes out on April 2nd. PBE, I don't know exactly when. I think it's March 19th. It's normally like 2 weeks before the set comes out, but that is subject to change based on like whenever they get the servers ready. Hopefully it should be fun. I'll give out like I might do like a little video on like some comps you could try on the PBE. Obviously they change the numbers every day, so none of them is like actually like a tier list or anything. But hopefully like when the set starts, it should be a fun time. Let me know what your goals are for this set, how much you're going to be playing, how much you're going to wish you're going to be playing. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.